the things that I'm going to say today, I know for sure that you're going to agree with me on at least the first thing, okay? We don't even have to be in the same stage of life. You might not even be in a place where you would say that you have the same faith or you're exploring faith or something like that, and maybe you're here trying to sort all that out, and that's okay. But I know for certain that you're going to agree with this statement, okay? Happiness is hard. It's hard. It's so hard, right? Getting to a place in your life where you've had the success that you've envisioned, Like you've had the job success you've envisioned, you've had the relational success that you have envisioned. Getting to the place in your life where you can go, you know what? All the decades and, all the weeks of work and, all the things, I've handled what is most important. Like I have. To be at a place where you can look at all of your relationships or all of your dealings and all those type of things and go, you know what? I've handled it. I've handled it well, and I'm in a good place. On top of all of that, to have maybe achieved what you set out to achieve and to feel like you've handled the most important things well, to have like a heart that is good, Like through all of that, there's nothing in here that weighs me down on how I set about to go take hold of that life. Happiness, it's hard. And in this series that we're in, we've sort of been unpacking happiness, but I want you to understand, and hopefully you've caught this, happiness isn't a feeling, because feelings are fleeting. So really what we're talking about is something that you can take a hold of, more of a state, or more of something you can possess, or maybe it looks more like the end or a destination. We understand that happiness, like true happiness, is more like what Paul is describing to Timothy in 1 Timothy 6:19. We've read this verse every week. Here's what he's encouraging Timothy to do. He's saying, hey, take a hold of that which is truly life. So happiness really, like true happiness is true life. Something that you can take a hold of, something that you can possess, something that you can get to. And all of us, me included, we've painted a picture of what that looks like, haven't we? We've painted a picture of what it would look like for us in our situations to take a hold of life that is truly life. And what is that? It's good relationships. It's our needs are met. It's success in different areas. It's a strong reputation with our peers. It's a sense of purpose about our work or about our daily life. It's opportunities to enjoy the good things in life. And some of us have painted the picture where it's like, well, we have everything we need, we have everything we want, we have good relationships, and we don't have any issues, That's what we're talking about. So we all have a picture of what this looks like. We do. Some of them are a little bit different here and there, but most of us do. But here's what I know for certain. All of us are trying to attain it. We're trying to take a hold of the picture of what we determine is, this is true life. This is happiness. This is how I know when I've arrived there. This is what we're trying to build. This is what you're trying to accomplish. This is what you're working so hard for. And then after you attain it, you try to maintain it, After you maybe get close to that picture, you're trying to keep it. I don't want to lose this, or you're trying to guard it, you're trying to protect it, you're trying to ensure that, this state, this season, I'm at the top of whatever, I have a great reputation, marriage is good, things are good. Like, how do I maintain this, so I don't lose it? And I don't know what's harder, attaining it or maintaining it. Because all of us have heard stories of people who they grabbed it, they got it, they attained it, and then subsequently lost it. In 2008, there was an investment advisor who got quite successful, got really connected. His name is Bernie Madoff, and he convinced 4,800 wealthy people to invest in his idea, which turned out to be a scheme. And it profited him $126 million because all those people thought that they could get rich quick, that they could cut some corners and it would be a quick payoff. And eventually, in the process of this scheme, he committed $65 billion in fraud and nobody knew. Until at one point, It just, for whatever reason, he confessed it to his sons. He said, "Sons, all of this is a fraud." He looked like he had attained it, but then he comes clean to his sons and he says, "This is all built on a lie." And then they turned him in. And he was sentenced to 150 years in prison for the largest Ponzi scheme in American history. He had it. And then he lost it. Personally, I knew a church leader, not anybody famous or anything like that, but this particular individual was, super intelligent, super popular with people, really good with people. He was married, had a wonderful family, several kids, In fact, he went to a church and caused the church to grow, like hundreds of %. He was just a popular guy with people. He was good at what he did. And then he had an affair, which led to a divorce, which led to his family and his children being hurt, which led to the church being hurt. And if you were to ask this person, it was because they were trying to attain happiness, and that's why they did all that. And it's so easy for us. Let me correct that. It's hard for us to attain it, but it's so easy for us to lose it. And you've heard stories in your life and your connections. And then we sort of ask, why does this happen? Why do people, or how do people, gain it, arrive, if you will, and then lose it? Like, they work so hard to attain, and then they fail to maintain. And the reason is really simple. Somewhere along the way, that person gave in. They gave in. They gave in. They began to trust in something other than what they had achieved with a lot of times. They began to trust in a different way to attain or maintain, and then everything comes crashing down. A lot of times it's as simple as they overlooked one thing or one factor, or they didn't heed one person's advice, or they stopped practicing what they used to practice. They gave in. What did they give in to? They gave in to greed. They gave in to greed. All for the picture of happiness. All to take a hold of it or to keep a hold of it. Greed. All of us are banking on something to attain that picture, to take a hold of that life. And all of us are trying to maintain it, to keep it, to protect it so we don't lose it. So what are you banking on for the interest of your happiness? That's been the question of this entire series. We're all banking on something. We're all trusting in something. And so far in this series, we have highlighted that your obstacle, your enemy, what you need to be aware of in your pursuit of happiness is greed. Greed is going to be your obstacle. We've talked about how greed is the need to be first. And so what do we need to do? We need to turn that around and be the kinds of people that give first with our resources, with our money, with whatever. That's how you combat greed. Last week we talked about how there's something called the myth of more, where we think that if we have more, we will actually be happy. But what's actually true is if we give up, we can give our all. We can move closer towards the interest of our happiness. We don't need more. We need to be more focused, maybe. And so how do we attain it? How do we maintain it? We're going to wrap this series up today. And how do we ensure that greed doesn't take away what I've worked so hard for? Because every day, you are enticed. I am enticed to give in. I'm tempted to cut a corner, to go down a path that I know is not a good path. Or I'm tempted to, overlook something because it's going to get me somewhere. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when greed entices you? What's your plan? Because it's not if greed entices you, it's when. How are you going to continue on this path of attaining true life? And how are you going to maintain and keep yourself from losing it in a bad weekend of decisions or overlooked decisions? And that's a question I want to wrestle with today. And today, Jesus has a final warning for us. And it's in the book of Luke, Luke chapter 16, starting with verse 14. And Jesus is warning us. He's saying, hey, this is my final warning about the path of greed and where it leads. And so we need to pay attention. Luke chapter 16, verse 14, here's who he's speaking to: the Pharisees, the religious leaders, the ones in power, the ones who had attained it in the public's eyes. The Pharisees, and we get this description of who the Pharisees were by Luke, the Pharisees who loved money heard all of this. So Jesus was teaching. He had just criticized them, the Pharisees, the religious leaders, for being failures at being a manager of what God had given them, especially the responsibility to steward God's message, especially the message that Jesus was the sent one from God. And so they were not managing their spiritual wealth and understanding very well. Also, we get a hint that they might be doing that because of what's at stake if they were to do that because they loved money. The Pharisees who loved money heard all this, and they were sneering at Jesus. You know what a sneer is? It's like when you smile, but you're looking at the person like, what are you doing? They were sneering at Jesus. He said to them, "You are the ones who justify yourselves in the eyes of others, but God knows your hearts. What people value highly is detestable in God's sight." We learned that they loved money. And that's not all. They loved power, they loved influence, and they loved their picture. Their picture of what it looked like, of what true life looked like, of how they interpreted that God was going to work in the world. They loved it. They thought that their way and their interpretation of what God was doing was the way and the right way. And in doing so, they also rejected Jesus as the means, the way to God's future. They valued a different way than God did, but they didn't know it. They thought they had attained it. And so now they were trying to maintain it. And so what are they doing? What does Jesus accuse them of? Hey, you have the wrong picture. You don't realize it. And so now you're justifying it. You're pushing me away. You're sneering at me. Ultimately, their sneering went to plotting to kill and get rid of Jesus, And so he's trying to show them that their way is off. They have the wrong picture, and now they're trying to maintain that picture, and he's trying to show them, whoa. You've got it wrong here. And so Jesus shares this very unique parable, one of the most unique, and he's doing it to call them out about their poor managing skills when it comes to their spiritual wealth and even their physical wealth. And so he's calling them out, and he's warning us in the process. So verse 19 of Luke chapter 16, there was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. At his gate was laid a beggar named Lazarus, not that Lazarus, covered with sores and longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs came and licked his sores. So Jesus sets this story up and he shows us two characters. The rich man is supposed to represent the Pharisees, the religious leaders, the ones who had. And he describes the rich man as living in luxury, which is really two words put together, and it means to be cheerful because of a sense of victory. So in other words, this rich man thinks that, he has arrived. He has made it to the top. And so he's going to live like it. He's going to, eat splendidly. Everything's going to be over the top because he's attained it, and now he's going to celebrate in it. And so Jesus is clearly pointing out an extreme of a type of personality. And then he shows us the beggar, which is the complete opposite, right? Like the polar opposite of what life could hand you. It's two different pictures. And this is to represent the people that Jesus was trying to reach out to, like sinners or those on the outside. And what we see about the beggar is that he's covered in illness. So you've got one that's covered in riches, extravagant, and the other is illness and poverty. He's getting more compassion from unclean dogs than he is from this individual. And as we look in, we're obviously sympathetic to the beggar already, right? And that's intentional. Verse 22, the time came when the beggar died, and the angels carried him to Abraham's side, which was an image that a Jewish person in those days would have had of what, the afterlife looked like, or what paradise would be, where good people go. They would have called it Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, which was a Greek word that was borrowed to describe, the grave, or a place where maybe the not so good people went when they died. In Hades, where he was in torment, he looked up and he saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. So he called to him, "Father Abraham, have pity on me and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in this fire." Both men have a different, completely opposite life, but they both have the same fate. They both end up dying. Their life on earth ends. And here's what Jesus tells us: they end up in different places. And in those places, their pictures are reversed. It looks like the one who had it lost it, and the one who didn't have it attained it. And we learn that this is, kind of an eternal thing. This isn't like a short-term thing. This is eternal. And by the way, the word name Lazarus means God helps. And so we get the idea that Lazarus was being helped by God to attain it and to keep it and to maintain it. He banked on God. What is this agony that the rich man is talking about? This isn't necessarily supposed to be like a literal interpretation for us. It's symbolism, because there potentially could be agony on the other side of this life for us. What's he talking about? I think it's the torment of guilt. It's the torment of I had it, and I fumbled it, and I lost it. The torment is he's receiving what a life of greed returned him. And he's kind of surprised, isn't he? He's kind of wondering, I thought I had it. Why am I here? I thought I was blessed. I was living like I was blessed by God. What went wrong? Verse 25, Abraham replied, "Son, remember that in your lifetime you received," and this is an interesting choice of a pronoun, "your good things, your picture, while Lazarus received bad things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. Remember, every day on your way to attain and maintain it." Do you remember at your gate, every day was this person in need? He's on your path, and what did you do? You looked away. You looked the other way. You overlooked the right thing on your way to attain. You missed it. Remember when you didn't look his way? Instead, you looked the other way? Do you remember? Do you remember how after you looked the other way, what did you do? You justified not doing the right thing in order to maintain this thing you got going on here. He's trying to help the rich man and all of us. Hey, do you remember when you gave in to greed? Do Do you remember when during your life you meant well and you thought you had it, but you really didn't manage it very well? Here's what we have to understand. Greed, it always leads to guilt. It always leads to guilt. It will promise you gain and good things, but hear me, it will ruin everything. Sure, it sounds good. It sounds better for you, but it won't end there. And Proverbs has a remarkable section in the first chapter that explains why we sort of go in the direction of greed, and then it gives us a warning to not give into it. So Proverbs chapter 1, verse 10 says, "My son, if sinful men entice you, do not give in to them. If they say, 'Come along with us, let's lie in wait for innocent blood. Let's ambush some harmless soul. Let's swallow them alive like the grave and whole, like those who go down to the pit. We will get all sorts of valuable things and fill our houses with plunder. Cast lots with us. We will share the loot.'" Did you hear the promise of greed in there? You're going to get valuable things. You're going to get to it easier and quicker. You're going to get to enjoy more. Here's the warning. "My son, do not go along with them. Do not set foot on their paths, for their feet rush into evil. They are swift to shed blood. How useless to spread a net where every bird can see it. These men lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush only themselves. Such are the paths of all who go after ill-gotten gain." It takes away the life of those who get it. The New Living Translation says it like this: "Such is the fate of all who are greedy for money. It robs them of life." At the promise of you'll attain it, you'll get a chance to share in the loot. You'll be able to take a hold of life if you just, look over here. Don't look over there, look over here. Let's do it this way. You'll get it faster, it'll benefit you, it'll be better for you, and no one will find out. See, all of us, if we're honest, we're tempted, more often than we'd like to admit, to overlook what's right in pursuit of attaining a happy life. To give in a little, to cheat a little here, to justify a little bit more over there, to overlook that for it. See, greed is getting what I need by any means necessary. What matters most is getting it. And then if you're fortunate enough to get it, you do the hard work of maintaining it, which opens a whole nother door of possible things that you shouldn't do. See, we always think the ends justify the means, but that's greed. See, greed entices you. Cut that corner. You'll get what you want faster, You're entitled to it. It'll be easier. Just skip that. Just cross that part out. The other day, I was in an ethical dilemma at Six Flags, okay? And maybe you've been there. And I had my kids were going to a ride, and I thought, I'm going to go wait in this line over here so that when they're done with that ride, they can come, over to me. And first of all, is saving a spot the same thing as cutting? See, this was my dilemma. And the only reason why it was my dilemma is because I was asked by the people I was with. And I was like, I don't know, I'm here, they're with me, what does it matter, all that kind of stuff. And I started thinking, literally there, going, is this okay? I don't know. Is it okay to do this? And you can decide later and help me out, maybe come tell me or whatever. But I started thinking to myself, why would this be okay? And then I started thinking, here's the first two reasons that popped in my head. Well, I've seen others do this, so it's probably fine. And I've done this before, and it worked. We didn't have to wait as long. We got to go on the ride faster. We had to go on more rides. It was awesome. No one cared. No one complained. And so I don't know if where that plays into ethics and all of that. Maybe I don't know. But what it made me think of is, we are oftentimes presented with opportunities to cut corners for the interest of our happiness, for getting it faster or whatever. What corners have you cut in business? In how you pay people? And how you receive money? What corners have you cut in conversations, where, I don't know if I should say that whole thing right there. Or maybe I'll polish this up a little bit so it's a little more palatable. Where have you cut corners at work? At school? Where have you cut corners like in sexuality or in your pursuit of a relationship that consists of that? Look, I've been there. Friend to friend, maybe leader to leader. You think to yourself, you don't even know you're thinking it. You go, do I withhold this information? Or at least part of this information? How can I say this or soothsay this so that I can save a little bit of face, they can save a little bit of face? Do I cheat on this one answer? Do I report this income? Do I slightly bend, adjust the rules a little here, a little there? It's all for the greater good, and who's really gonna know? Because greed rationalizes the lies. It calls something okay because it's providing a way for you to receive it, to take hold of it, to attain it. It's giving me what I'm looking for, so it's okay if I do blank. We bought a trampoline, our first trampoline. Did y'all catch first? Our first trampoline several years ago, and I put it together, which I did not enjoy. And so, it's all for the kids to have, happy, fun time so we could rest and recover in the house from how much work they put us during the day. If you're a parent and you have a trampoline, you know what I'm talking about. It is life. Go out there, jump. We hang out in here. It's great. So I built it, and I didn't, stake it down and weigh it down a lot, and it was fine, That would have been an extra step, but I had to go buy sand or something like that. I didn't want to do that. The kids were jumping on it. And then I forgot about it. Until, all of a sudden, a severe thunderstorm came out of nowhere, and I'm looking out the window, and I watch it fly. And I run to the back door, and sure enough, it's 8 yards down by now. I'm just watching it tumble and tumble and tumble into a fence. And our second trampoline, it's staked. When we heard there might be a chance of weather, we weighed it down even more, So we learned, right? But I say I. But, why did I cut that corner? I didn't want to take the 30 minutes to do that, what, really? Really? See, greed says you don't need to heed something that's wise. In fact, if you stay on this path, you'll get it quicker, and it'll take less work, and it's a better option for you. See, we begin to give in to greed when we believe that we can be happy easier. All of you agreed with me, I think, that happiness is hard. So how can you be happier easier, right? That's why it's alluring. But remember, it's not easy. Jesus said it like this, Matthew chapter 7, "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction. And many enter through it." Lots of people are doing it. They're getting away with it. They're cutting the corners. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to what? Life, the thing that you're trying to attain, the thing that you're trying to maintain. And only a few find it. What paths have you went down? And you kept going down because it was fine. Others are doing it. You deserve it. You've worked hard. You've got the perfect rationalization. See, listen, having character will always get you further than cutting corners. The way of Jesus It might take longer. It might be harder. You might have to do some annoying things that other people don't do. But listen, it gets you there. And it lasts. See, the scary part of, trying to attain it in life is you could actually attain it, maybe, your picture, and not heed the way of Jesus in this life. And it's scary. That should scare us to death. Let's finish the story. And besides all of this, between us and you, this is Abraham talking to the rich man, between you is a great chasm that has been set in place so that those who want to go from here to there to you cannot, nor can anyone cross over from there to us. He answered, then I beg you, Father, send Lazarus to my family, for I have 5 brothers. Let him warn them so that they will not also come to this place of torment. And Abraham replied, they have Moses and the prophets. They have the way spelled out for them. They know what's right. They know what's wrong. Let them listen to them. No, Father Abraham, he said, but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent. They will change. They will surely follow. He said to them, if they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced, even if someone raises from the dead. Speaking about the propensity for the Pharisees to be so justifying that they will not respond to Jesus' death and resurrection to change their ways. Finally, in the afterlife, the rich man sees it. He understands how he overlooked it. And he's filled with guilt. And his response, when he realizes he can't change his fate, please go warn the people I love so they don't do what I did. They don't think they had it, and they actually didn't have it. See, Jesus is showing the Pharisees that they had the way, that Moses pointed to his ways, and they were overlooking the way of God in order to maintain their picture of what following God looked like, and it was fueled by guilt because they got rich off of it. They loved wealth more than they loved the way of God. They loved the end. They loved it more than the means they chose to get it. And then after they got it, they justified it. In effort to attain and maintain life, the Pharisees, what did they do? They reasoned that Jesus is not the way. In fact, he's in the way. And so it's actually in our best interest to remove him so we can go after it. And we hear that and we go, man, that's crazy, but this is exactly what you and I do. We see Jesus. We see his teachings on morality. We see his wise instruction for our life. And what do? We push him aside. We plot a way to remove him so we can get on with it. We overlook what he says in pursuit of what we think will get us happiness, and then we justify it and we think we're taking hold of it. How are you plotting to get rid of Jesus? So you can do what? So you can have more money? So you can do what you want? So you can live guilt-free? So you can do relationships any way you want? Finances any way? Like, what corners are you cutting? Like, how are you trying to push Jesus out of the picture? And take a hold of life through some other means than the way of Jesus? Where are you giving in rather than living in the ways of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus? What good are you overlooking so you can attain it? And some of us, we've got to maintain it now that we have it, and we're tempted to give in. So I got 3 warnings for you. 3 warnings for you from this parable that Jesus intends for us and for those who were listening to him that day. The first one is the path you choose impacts your future. Where are you being promised an easy way? It will rob you of what you're trying to grab if it's the path of greed. The path you're on will impact your future. Just ask the rich man in this story. The second warning, there is still time to recognize the means that are not in line with the way of Jesus, that we justify because you're here. Where are you justifying what is not okay? You still have time to kind of turn that around. See, what greed doesn't talk to you about, what pursuing your own way doesn't talk to you about, is it doesn't talk to you about the guilt it always leads you to. It lies about the result of that compromise. And then you end up working harder to cover it all up. There's still time. You don't have to keep living that way. You don't have to keep, doing that just because everybody else is doing business that way. The third warning, one day, it'll be too late to turn this around. It'll be too late to repent. It'll be too late to adjust course. And it's sobering. The message to the rich man and to the Pharisees and to us is, hey, at some point there's no do-overs. You can't go backwards. You can't undo the good you didn't do, the good you overlooked. Jesus might say, if your means to happiness is to overlook my ways, and then you justify and you lie to keep on that path, then the story about the rich man, well, this will be your end. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. This doesn't have to be true for you. This doesn't have to be your future end. So what do? Look, this is so important. Don't overlook the means, but magnify the means in your daily life. Don't be so focused on it, on the end, on grabbing a hold of true life and happiness that you lose it all trying to attain it or maintain it, but rather obsess about the means, obsess about how you go about it, obsess about the way. See, how you get it, how you get there is more important than getting there. It's actually the point. So how do we get there? How do we ensure that we don't give in to this greed that is pushing in on us? What do we bank on? Jesus is our means to happiness and nothing else. He is the way to attain and maintain happiness. How? Through trusting in his person and in his ways. Is Jesus your means to attaining it and maintaining it? Or is it something else? There's 4 ways that I want to leave you with that can magnify the means. Because we don't always look at the means. We're always focused on the end. But it's really about how you get there. And that's where greed works its way in. That's where we start to give him. The first thing that you need to magnify the means by is you need to just go ahead and admit, hey, I need grace to live free from all greed. Because the truth is, all of us have probably been greedy. We've cut a corner. Listen, the forgiveness that only comes through Jesus is free. Even though we've plotted and pushed him aside, he plotted and put himself right in the middle and went to a cross to forgive us, to be the means through which we have forgiveness. See, Jesus is our means. He's how we attain it. He's how we maintain it. And so maybe you're in a place today where you know that you have maybe some sin or some greed or whatever. All you need to do is look up to Jesus and say, God, please forgive me. There's nothing you can do to attain that forgiveness, and there's nothing you're going to do to maintain your future happiness. It's all only through the power of Jesus and what he did for you and the perfect life that he lived. It's in your best interest after you've received grace, which is free, which costs you nothing, which you don't have to maintain, to continue to trust in the ways of Jesus. Marianne Jennings did some research on 7 common threads as to why, how did she put it? Good people at great companies do stupid things. And it's kind of 3 categories that I summarized. The first one is high pressure. There's a lot of pressure when you're at the top, when you're working hard to maintain things. The second one, kind of another category, is that there was no people who felt like they could advise or speak up to help somebody from doing a stupid thing. And then the third, there was a propensity in these companies to try to cover up bad things with more good things. And that's what people were doing. The second kind of way I want to magnify for you is, this needs to be true about you. I'm honest about pressure. It's hard to attain happiness. We have a tendency, because it's hard and because we feel so much pressure, to look for easy and then to justify ill-gotten gain. You have to be honest about the pressure of holding all this together because you can't do it on your own. The third is, you need to give people access. Are you a person that says, I give people access? Who has access to you? Who are you letting in to advise you and has the power to help guide you, to give you help? You should be afraid if no one has access to you because you have a risk of losing it all. The fourth thing is, this might be the most important, when I read, I heed. The Bible. When you open up a page of Scripture in the words of Jesus and it says, do this, and you do the other thing, that'll lead you to a bad place. Become the kind of person that doesn't distract from what you need to do. You can't compensate the bad you do with more good, but you're going to heed. You're going to follow the wisdom of Scripture because it's the lamp unto your feet and the light unto your path. What is life that is truly life? It's when the means you take a hold of it is guilt-free. When you get to the end of your life, to the afterlife, it's guilt-free because Jesus was your means. You look back over that season, over, while you led this or while you were a parent or whatever, and you go, I trusted in Jesus. I didn't cut corners. I worked hard, and when I did, I begged for forgiveness while I could. I fight greed with grace. I'm honest. I gave people access so I wouldn't shipwreck my life. And when I read the words of Jesus, I heeded the way of Jesus. Listen to Proverbs 16:20. Whoever listens to what is taught will succeed. And whoever trusts the Lord will be happy. Don't give in. And in the end, you'll be happy. Why? Because you banked on the person and the way of Jesus. Let's pray together. God, thank you so much for Jesus. He's our means to forgiveness. There's nothing we've done that you don't forgive. There's not a way that we've cut a corner that you somehow haven't made atonement for, paid for. And so we look to you. Our hope of taking a hold of life isn't a destination somewhere. It's following your ways and trusting and banking on you today. God, I pray that you would help us to let go of the allure of greed and focus totally on you. Help us to magnify how to live in the ways of Jesus. Then I know we'll actually take a hold of happiness. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Hey, would you stand and let's sing this song together?